You're listening to the Dibbly Dobbly podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram.
Hi, I'm Pearce, head coach of Cricket of Art Academy, or the Czech Cricket Academy, and you're listening to the Dibbly Dobbly podcast.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Dibbly Dobbly podcast. And on the podcast, we have started a new series on the podcast looking at associate nations within cricket and how they are developing the game in their country. Many of us cricket fans know so much about the established cricketing countries and not enough on the associate nations who play cricket. So it would be nice to learn more about those associate countries, and via the podcast, people can learn more as well. For today's Associate Cricket Series episode, we are discussing all things Czech Republic cricket, and joining me to discuss and talk about all things Czech Republic cricket is Pearce. Chris, welcome.
Hi, Jack. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure, Chris. It's my pleasure to have you on to talk about all things Czech Republic cricket, because many of our listeners and watchers of the podcast would not associate cricket in the Czech Republic. As it's been the case throughout this Associate Cricket Series that I've done, interviewing various people from various countries. A lot of people make that connection and say, oh, they can't play cricket there, but that's not true. They do play cricket there. So it's the same thing for the Czech Republic, and they are a part of the cricketing family, of course. They've been playing cricket for some time, and you'll talk about that with us in this chat today. And also people will get a bit of an understanding of how cricket works and integrates itself in society over there in the Czech Republic, and see how the game is growing and developing in the Czech Republic. And hopefully you will provide that with us in this chat today, Chris, and also people will get a good education and learn something new and wanting to do their own research and look into a bit more about Czech Republic cricket after listening to our chat today. But it's certainly going to be an education for me, that's for sure, Chris, to learn more about cricket in the Czech Republic and people like yourself and other people who are doing great things. So a lot of good work has been done. So hopefully,
it sounds like a big responsibility. I'll try and do my best to share as much as I can.
I'm sure you will, Chris. I'm sure you'll make the Czech Republic proud. That's for sure. So no need to worry, no need to stress, and I'm sure it will be okay, and it will turn out well in the end, as it always does. So before we do that, Chris, as I do with all my guests that I've interviewed on the podcast, I like to take them back to when they first got into cricket. And it's been very fascinating listening to people's memories on how they started to get into cricket. So, Chris, let's go back to the very beginning, growing up. I know that's a long time ago. Time flies. What were your earliest memories of watching, playing, and even going to the cricket? And who were some of the cricketing idols that you looked up to growing up?
Well, I'm from a footballing family, so cricket wasn't exactly high on the agenda at home. But I think it was when I was around 7 or 8, a family friend who was into cricket would call up at 11 o'clock or something like that on a Saturday morning saying, is there any chance we could borrow your son for a day, because we're short of players, as is always the case in like the 4th team of Mansfield. What was it? Mansfield and the Plesley Cricket Club. So that's basically where I got into it. I would go turn up for the entire day, fielding at third man, batting at number 11, but thoroughly enjoying every moment of it. I think my parents enjoyed me being away for the day as well, which was always nice for them. And basically just got into it from there. Following, it was more on the playing side than watching back in those days. So really, just getting involved with all the adults. Used to love trying to throw the balls in from the boundary. Whenever it would come anywhere near me, cheering the players on and everything. So yeah, I guess that's where it all started. I guess first memories of watching cricket are a bit depressing. Watching you guys absolutely hammer England all the time. Which was a bit rough, a rough introduction to watching cricket. And then, like during summer holidays in school, we had some open cricket nets near to us. So with a couple of friends, we'd go there for, 4, 6, 8 hours a day, drink and a little lunch box with us, and just play for hours and hours in those nets. So yeah, back in England, it was a lot easier to get access to cricket than it is here.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose everyone can relate to that, Chris. You know, that's their introduction into the game. Watch it on TV or play in your local club. So certainly, a lot of people can relate to that. How would you best describe yourself as a cricketer?
Enthusiastic, I guess, would be the technical term. I mean, I'm a better wicketkeeper than anything else, I guess. Enjoy captaining sides. I love getting into the strategy and different tactics and things like that. Man management is a fun thing for me. But no, I mean, I couldn't really bowl, couldn't really bat so well. Occasionally hit the ball to the boundary over cow corner mostly. But yeah, enthusiastic is the way I describe myself.
Yes. Nothing like a dirty slog across the line to cow corner, isn't it?
Especially 1 in 10 go to the boundary, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right, absolutely. Well, I suppose it's all about the taking part and being a part of something, I suppose, and enjoying yourself and having fun, which a lot of people do when they play cricket. And doesn't matter how well you are in terms of your skill or talent-wise, everyone's treated equally and with respect, and you just turn up and have fun and do your best. That's all. That's all you can hope for.
I guess actually, just there, you've touched on one of my first memories. Was when I started playing properly, as like not a few years after, so I don't know, 11 years old or something. I used to play with a guy called Steve Spencer, who in his heyday was quite a good local cricketer in the Mansfield area. But by this time, he was in his late 60s, I think, and he'd only got one leg. So he used to play on crutches, and he was still a good cricketer. Like, he was a spinner, an off spinner, and used to bat a lot. And I used to be his runner. So because he was a good cricketer, I would spend so much time out in the middle, just running for him, basically. So yeah, as you say, it's inclusive for everybody. I can certainly vouch for that as my introduction, playing with Steve.
Definitely. Absolutely. That's an inspiring story that you've shared with us there. I did see someone in India, similar thing like that. Doesn't have any legs or anything like that. I don't think he has any legs or anything like that. I think he has arms and he bowls, which just shows you no matter what disability or any challenges that you may have as a person, you can still play any sport, let alone cricket. So yeah, definitely we've heard of those inspiring stories, and you know, cricket's inclusive, as you mentioned, and that's why it's a great sport, because everyone's treated equally with respect, and no matter what your background is or any disability or any physical ailments, you can still be part of a cricket club or a cricket team. So that's fantastic, and that's what the game of cricket's all about. So yeah, well, you must have been very tired running between the wickets every time.
It was good fun. It was good
fun. Yes, well, that's one of the things in cricket now. You're not allowed an international runner. You know, that international cricket, you're not allowed to have a runner anymore. They outlawed that. But at club cricket and lower levels of cricket, you can still have a runner. And it's one of those things in cricket. Were you ever involved in any mix-ups? You know, there's often mix-ups with runners and the non-strikers.
I was pretty noisy as a child, so I think my calling was quite loud and clear, hopefully. So I can't remember any big mix-ups, but I'm sure there must have been some along the way.
Well, it's always confusion, isn't it, when the runner's involved? You know, you've seen it in international cricket. You know, the person who's injured or can't run, you know, sets off for the run himself, and then the runner goes off as well, and then the non-striker saying, "What are you doing?" It's all calamitous, and it's just funny. Well, it's one of those things in cricket, I suppose. It's quite unique about the sport, isn't it? You just have to laugh at these things, I suppose. So then you find yourself in the Czech Republic. So tell us about, how did you find yourself in the Czech Republic doing what you're doing now in terms of the cricket setup over there?
Well, there's quite a lot of history in there. So when I first moved here, I was just acting as a player. getting in and around was around the national setup, because I mean it was a little bit lower standard back then. So got involved quite quickly, purely on the playing side. There was a guy at that time called Scott Page, who is a legend of Czech cricket, who was doing all of the junior stuff back in those days. So I kind of jumped in to help him at international schools. So we started an after-school club at one of them, doing a little bit of work there. And at the same time, that was when I was on the Czech cricket board in different seats, I guess primarily as development officer. And I think I was working with a group of kids for a year or so, and the kids started leaving from international schools. Their parents got reassigned to different places. So this promising group of juniors kind of just disappeared, and we were left, and it was quite disappointing. It was around that time we were about to invest in getting a house. I was working in sales back then, saved up a little bit of money. And my wife said, well, rather than getting locked into an expensive mortgage, being miserable, selling something you don't really know too much about in the IT world, why don't you do something that you're going to enjoy and start trying to grow cricket among Czechs? So essentially the rest is kind of history. And I think it was late 2015 when we pulled the trigger to start that, September 2015. So where are we now? Almost 9 years on, 8.5 years on. There's been a lot of challenges, a lot of lessons learned, a lot of mistakes along the way. But yeah, so now we're coaching in after school clubs. We've got junior national teams and all sorts of things. Not so much playing from a personal perspective now. I guess 3 or 4 years ago, really just took the decision to focus on the coaching, because cricket can take up a lot of time and a lot of energy. Played over the summer months when it's really quite warm, and I found that when I was still playing 40 over games, it would kill me for the next day, and I wasn't putting so much into the coaching. So rather now just focusing on the coaching, although I am playing with our kids now in the adult league, which is a kind of a rewarding thing after a lot of hard work to get them there.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. And I suppose, you just got to do things that you feel like I can make a difference. And that's what you did. You just, as you said, I made that decision just to go over to the Czech Republic and, help grow the game of cricket. And here you are in 2024 doing that. So, yeah, definitely there's a lot of good work being done over there, and a lot of passionate people behind the scenes, including yourself and other people who want to make a difference. And that's the thing in associate cricket, isn't it? That people just want to make a difference. People are passionate about the sport and about cricket. Obviously, with associate cricket, as we'll discuss in our chat as we go further and further, Chris, about the challenges, trying to grow and develop the game, money, resources, volunteers, people wearing many different hats in associate cricket. Just before we started our chat, before we started recording, Chris, you told me about the various roles that you've had. So you've juggled many hats in your time over there in the Czech Republic.
Still feel like I'm wearing a few now, to be honest. But
yeah. That's right. Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. I think someone once described to me that associate cricket is chaotic, and it can get chaotic in terms of various things happening and that things not quite going right or anything like that. But you persevere through the challenges, and at the end of the tunnel, there's always something to look forward to and something to be proud of in terms of kids and people getting involved in the game, and that's what makes it worthwhile, isn't it?
Definitely. I mean, it's been a big reward for us over the last couple of years, let's say, seeing these kids develop into national teams, junior national teams, occasionally bringing home a trophy, and then obviously playing against the adults firstly in the indoor leagues, and now in the senior T20 league. It's a big thing. Like it's big reward for those hard slogs leading up to this.
Yeah, definitely. Or being a coach or being a mentor of some sort in any sport, but let alone cricket, and trying to teach that to someone in the Czech Republic, for example, who may not speak English as their first language, which is often a difficult challenge to try and overcome. But I suppose cricket's a universal language, and by doing certain things, by showing certain things with batting or bowling or fielding or even wicket keeping, you can get the message across. Has that been a big challenge for you when you've been coaching over there in the Czech Republic?
I mean, definitely. Like when we first started, I always said that our biggest weakness was that I wasn't able to speak Czech, because I agree with you that obviously demonstrations and things like can get certain parts across, but when you've got a complete zero base of knowledge to start from, you need a little bit of language to kind of explain kind of where they're starting from, or like the foundation steps of understanding of the sport. So essentially I had to learn the language through these, 8.5 years. And the kids were my teachers, basically. And then it all started with one of our after school clubs was based at a school for kids with speech impediments. And they were the ones who first accepted my incredibly bad Czech and encouraged me to use it, because they were used to hearing it from their classmates all the time. So I was making so many mistakes, but they could still understand me somehow, amazingly. And they helped me through it, and they were teaching me as they would teach each other. And yeah, what are we now, 5-6 years down the line from there, and pretty much I'm thankfully able to communicate a little bit in the language. But it's a big issue that we're facing. You mentioned about the challenges there, that if we try and reach out to the kids who can already comprehend English, they're already old enough to have selected their own sports, and we've kind of missed the boat with them. So we have to get in younger before they're kind of able to speak English, which then means that we need our coaches to be able to speak Czech, which, yeah, it's not easy.
It's not. But I did suggest, as a suggestion, when I spoke to people from Estonian cricket on the podcast, David Robson and Ragnar Halleck from Estonia. For those who haven't checked out that episode, please do and listen to it, because it was a very enjoyable chat that I had with Estonian cricket. And I raised the idea there, Chris, about probably the MCC translating the laws into the local language or dialect. But that can often be a difficult thing as well, because certain things don't translate well from English to the particular language of the particular country involved. I'm not sure what's that like in the Czech Republic in terms of translating certain things into Czech, but maybe that could be something. And I know the ICC are doing that as well in terms of coaching courses, umpiring courses. They do have them in English and the language of the country that they're issuing the courses in. So
it's amazing. It's amazing you should raise that for several reasons. The first being Estonia Cricket CEO Terry O'Connor is our former CEO. They poached him. So Terry was responsible for a lot of our growth over the last 5 years or so. So hi, Terry, if you're listening. Second is we actually, it doesn't matter how many years ago, reached out to MCC, and they had their videos, which were narrated by Stephen Fry on the laws of cricket. And we asked for permission to do our own voiceovers. So we had a famous musician here, Honza Homala, record a Czech version of those videos. So they're on our YouTube at the moment. Unfortunately, the laws get updated so often that many of them are already out of date, and kind of we've already bothered him too much to go back to him for updates, kind of thing. But yeah, we've got those. And then the final expansion from it, as you touched on, is the courses that ICC are doing right now. Coach education courses, umpires courses, groundskeeper courses, I think, are all available with AI translations. And we're going through the process right now of verifying those translations to make sure that they kind of sit. So if you translate bat, obviously that could be the animal or it could be the item. And quite a lot of the times, we're getting people in there. It was telling them to hold on to the animal, which is not the best idea. So we're going through and correcting all those, but it's a huge amount of work. That's required to get those. But we've got the first of those courses, the Credo course, ready, and 2 more are on their way. And I guess we'll come back to this a little bit later in the conversation, but these courses are like very, very important for our growth. So yeah, very topical comment that you made there.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense, doesn't it? It makes sense because you know that's how you're going to get the message across, so to speak, in terms of the laws, but also coaching kids and people who want to become scorers or umpires or coaches, or preparing cricket pitches as curators or ground staff. So it makes sense because cricket is a multicultural sport. It's all over the world now in many different countries and many different continents. So it makes sense. So, it's something that, ICC and the MCC should really think about. Give us some serious thought in terms of, this will help us improve getting the message of cricket out there to a lot of people and make them.
Well, I mean, kudos to the ICC for what they've done. I think Abby, who sits in the head office of ICC, has pulled together these courses. And previously, whenever there was a course released, there was a big financial cost to getting them translated into local language. And this is essentially a free translation that just needs to be verified. So big kudos to them already, I think, for that, especially from our side. Big help.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. And also we'll talk about it a bit later in the growth and development of the game in the Czech Republic. But also, as you touched on before, coaches who are not from the Czech Republic originally, like yourself and other people, them learning the language as well and trying to communicate that. So it's definitely something that people should think about more in depth, and it's already good to hear that a lot of people are making those improvements and making those changes to what can be done in terms of that communication side of things, which is fantastic. But also, Chris, it was very fascinating listening to your journey. I always find it fascinating listening to people's journey into cricket. We can all relate, I suppose. We all have different pathways into the game and different introductions into the game. So thank you for sharing that with us in terms of your introduction into the game, how you got involved with it, how you decided to pack up everything and move over to the Czech Republic and say, why not? I'm just going to be here to try and grow and develop the sport that I love and want to pass it on to other people. And that's what you're doing at the moment. So thank you for sharing that journey with us today.
You're welcome.
So, Chris, I thought to start this interview on Czech Republic cricket, let's talk about the history of cricket in the Czech Republic. You can learn a lot about cricket from its history, and the history of cricket in the Czech Republic is quite interesting from the research I've done and the reading I've done as well. So, Chris, give us a brief overview on the history of cricket in the Czech Republic, if you can manage that for us. I know history is not your strongest suit, but if you can just give us a brief overview on the history, how it all started, when it was introduced and all that stuff.
So I think it was around the 1990s. There was connected with the British Embassy here, employees looking and a few Brits who were here just looked to get together and play some form of game in the 1990s. I think they played an Ambassadors Cup with tennis balls or something, very, very informal affair. It kind of grew from there as more people, there were quite a few Sri Lankans at that point, a couple of Australians, I believe, that were getting involved. And eventually they reached the stage where they had enough to make a team. So they started to invite teams from the UK, stag parties and club tours from the UK to come and play a little bit of cricket, but obviously all the highlights that Prague had to offer. And it kind of went on like that for quite a few years. And more people kind of got involved. With that, there was a ground developed. When I say ground, it was like a public meadow where we kind of cut the grass down a little bit lower. Vipich, that was the name of the ground then. And this kind of continued at Vipich. Eventually, we ended up with 2 fields there. This, again, was all I mentioned Scott already. This was all of his doing, or the majority of his back-breaking work, out with a push mower, mowing a cricket field. And so this continued up until I think it was around 2000. Well, I mean, in the early 2000s, I imagine that's when then clubs started to break off, and they started to be in domestic competition. So first two clubs, I think Prague Cricket Club was the first club that was formed. And then there were shoot-offs from the Prague Bohemians, Vinohrady Cricket Club. And then there started to be competition. I think it was back in 2006 when they became members of the ICC and first started to compete as a national team, representing the Czech Republic. So there was a competition in Wales. I can't remember the name of the city where that was played. Slovenia. These were like the first competitions where the Czechs got involved. I mean, they didn't set the world alight in the beginning, but I think that's always the way when you're taking your first steps in development. And things have kind of snowballed over time. So what's that, 20 years ago, or just short of 20 years ago now, we've now got a ground which is based on the property of one of the former founders, Hugo Banks. So there's now two fields in Vinohrady cricket ground just outside of Prague, which is a beautiful setting. There's a ground down in Brno, which is the equivalent of Manchester, I guess, like the second city of the Czech Republic. And I think we're up to about 24 teams or something like that, and that's had to be limited this year because of ground availability. We actually lost the ground last year for complicated reasons, but we've got another ground that's coming alive hopefully later this summer, just awaiting some planning permission to be able to put the concrete in for the pitches, which will give us another 3 fields. So that's going to remove that hamstring, and hopefully from, where are we now, 2024, so hopefully in 2025 we're going to be looking at 30 plus teams across multiple competitions. This year there's only T20, unfortunately, and I'm speaking primarily about men because that's where the cricket has essentially grown from. And I think it was just around COVID time we started to make the push to introduce women into the game. So we started a women's team with it was across from Sparta, is one of the main football teams here, and there's like a big car park across from their place. So we started there because it was really, really central, and we had something like 30 women come along, and they were doing some training with me. We played some games at the end. And then, unfortunately, because of COVID, there was a little bit of a pause. So we kind of had to restart again afterwards. And now, I'm sorry if I'm jumping ahead in our chat, but this year should be the first T20 internationals for women, which is going to be a huge milestone for that. So yeah, there's been a lot of progress across the board. Geographic expansion has been a big one. Getting down in Brno, the guys down there are doing amazing work, and there's a few towns or cities around there which are kind of now becoming a hub, or Brno is becoming a hub for clubs. So I think in the very near future we're going to see a geographically split league. And then maybe a Premier League where they need to do a little bit more travelling to get the best playing against the best players. Hope we covered everything. Hopefully.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Chris. I think a lot of people have just learned from what you've just taught us there about the history of it, how it became a thing, really, cricket in the Czech Republic. And it's always that common theme, isn't it? That England's always involved with the introduction of the game. I've never heard a story regarding the local embassy introducing cricket into the community. That's something new for me that I've heard. But many countries in Europe, in particular, that a lot of people I've spoken to in this series have said, yeah, there's similar things. Way back the British came and brought cricket in, and obviously that's where the game was originated from and developed, and they sort of branched out with their empire as the years progressed in those days. But definitely a lot of people would have learned a lot more about how cricket became a thing in the Czech Republic. So thank you for sharing that with us, Chris. brief history lesson. I know history is not everyone's cup of tea, but it's certainly my cup of tea in terms of cricket history, because it's always fascinating. And as I said earlier, you can learn so much from cricket from its history, and in particular a country as well, and how the game got introduced and brought into that particular country. So definitely something that I've learned today as well, Chris, and certainly our listeners and watchers of the podcast have certainly learned something as well, and may want to do their own research and dig deep into other things as well that you may not covered today, but certainly want to do that research and learn more. And that's the beauty of cricket. You just always want to learn more about different things within the game. So thank you for sharing that brief overview with us on the history of the game in the Czech Republic, Chris. Much appreciated. So, Chris, let's talk about the Czech Republic national teams, the women's teams and the men's teams. Be good to gain your insights on the two teams and learn more about their achievements, the players' stories, because many of the players come from diverse backgrounds. And Chris, for those who may not know a lot about the Czech Republic women's and men's teams, can you tell us more about them, the players, and some of their stories?
I can certainly try. So let's start with the men's if we can. So they're currently ranked 53rd in the T20 international rankings. They've taken a huge step forward in terms of ability, and I think that's grown from the rise in the number of players in the country. And when I say players, I mean expat players at the moment. There's some real stars on the team. So the new captain, and I don't know if that's, I may have just said something I shouldn't have said. I don't know. So let's just go on with some more of the established senior players. So there's a guy called Sudesh Wickramasekara, who is originally from Sri Lanka. When I first moved here, he was an absolute monster. Time is catching up on him a little bit now, so his bowling has slowed down a little bit. But he's got the nickname of the Beast, and he certainly hits the ball like one still. So he's plagued by injury at the moment, so fingers crossed he's going to be coming back into it. Another one of the superstars is Sabawoon Devizi, an Afghan who has been living here. Ooh, good question. How many years? Superstar player. He's unbelievable with the bat. He's a decent bowler and amazing in the field. Loves a good celebration as well, which is good to see. And he's forging good partnerships with Dylan Steyn, a Kiwi, who is another amazing talent. So, I mean, those three, sorry if I've missed anybody, guys, if you're listening, but I would say those three are like the standout stars who are pulling the team forward. We're just waiting for our juniors to come through. But yeah, so they've been competing in different ICC T20 events. They've got one coming up later this year, at the back end of summer, August, I think it is. And they're playing in a lot of, as I've heard when you've been speaking with other guests, the European cricket networks really helped in allowing our players to play more at international level, giving them more opportunities, getting them a lot more visible. So there's been a lot of T10 happening, which is a format that is really popular here. Or it's becoming really popular because of how quick and sharp it is. Europe's big into football, and kind of a T10 game lasts a similar duration to football. So there's a lot going on there. The men are playing. Ooh, that's wrong one. I'm just quickly looking at my notes here to check what I've got. So there's three big competitions coming up: the CE Cup, the ECI, and Hungary Cup, playing against various countries, and then there's the World Cup qualifiers. I'm trying to see where that's based. I'm sorry, I can't find that off the top of my head. So I'm going to use that as a segue to move forward into the women. So as I kind of already touched on, they've not played yet officially in T20 internationals. They played some T10 also through the Dan Weston and the European network. So they're playing some T10s this year against Greece and Croatia. And their first T20 internationals are going to be against very highly ranked Austria in our terms. So that's going to be a real acid test or jumping into the deep end, let's say. And then there's a tri-series coming later on in the summer against Gibraltar and Croatia. So it's amazing that the women are getting the foot on that ladder, making a start. They've been training a lot. There's not so many opportunities for games here, so it's really important that they're going to get these increased number of opportunities to play. The women have done an amazing job in creating a link with Germany and the Bundesliga there. So now I think this will be the third year, I believe, that they're competing in the Bundesliga, which is another reason or another step in the chain or another link on the ladder. I think I've said that the wrong way around, towards their development and growth, because you can only learn some things in the game by playing, and you need to be playing against a better opposition, and that's kind of what they've been hunting for, and thankfully they're getting. So good luck to everyone, all of both the men's and women's teams, because there's a busy summer for both of them coming up. Yeah,
definitely. And it's good to hear that they're going to keep busy this year and look to try and win some games and hopefully do well in various tournaments and series, as you rightly mentioned there. In terms of the home support from people in the Czech Republic, do people get around when the men's team are playing at home? Do they come out and watch? Good numbers in terms of crowds and support?
No. sorry to give you a really short answer to that one. Not really. It's an area for improvement, certainly among the Czech cricket community. I think if we can organise a bit more hospitality around the games, there can be more there. But I mean, there's an issue connected with the ECN stuff, with the keeping the players to one side. And there was a challenge for a long time around that, so not wanting too many spectators there in the beginning. But that's kind of moved on now. So hopefully, moving forward, they can get that. But in terms of and I think maybe I'm segueing into potentially the next question regarding kind of the knowledge of cricket among locals, because the cricket ground Vinoj is based in a district of Prague, which is outside of the centre, and the knowledge of the knowledge of cricket within that community is really quite low. So it's going to be difficult to draw people from there to come to the cricket ground. We've been trying to get into the schools and things to be able to show, so that when you get kids playing, parents become interested. There's a little bit more knowledge. But unfortunately, the Czech Republic is a little bit closed off in certain ways, resistant to change. And that's one of the towns or little districts which was resistant to letting us in, which for us didn't really sit very nicely. But there's been some recent changes in administration of the region, so fingers crossed we can get in there soon and things can spiral. We had at the back end of last summer, at the back end of one of the ECN events, the current chairman of Czech Cricket, Michael Londersborough, organised a big bonanza, I think was the name of the event. And we had the mayor come to that, or the new mayor, I should say, come to that event, and he was very keen, and he wrote a little piece which went into the local newspaper about the cricket, and we're not strangers, and you can come along, and we are welcoming you. We're not trying to be standoffish or anything like that. So fingers crossed this summer that we'll see a little bit more from that. Definitely.
Well, that's encouraging. Definitely, if the mayor's on side, that's definitely encouraging for people to be interested in cricket. In terms of junior pathways, under 19 teams, etc., is there any under 19 teams in the Czech Republic in terms of both the men's and the women's side of things for that particular pathway?
Not quite, but we're almost there. We're at under 18 at the moment. Essentially, we're growing up with our kids. So as they get a year older, we add an extra team to our repertoire, I guess. So we've got a lot of kids in the under 13 age, and we've got an under 15s team, and now we've got under 18 girls and a few under 18 boys. which is kind of supported by the under 15 boys, basically. So we're not at the stage where we're going to be reaching the under 19 World Cup pathway yet. There needs to be quite a lot more growth to reach the criteria to be able to get that in. But things are growing all the time. We're getting stronger all the time. So yeah, hopefully watch this space. I guess that's the next big milestone for us, is going to be to get into one of those qualifiers.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely, and that's very encouraging to hear. Are you really encouraged by the juniors that are coming up, and in terms of their development and the way they're playing their cricket? Are you hopeful that they will be very good cricketers one day?
With every, let's call it cohort that comes through, they're getting better and better. We've got a kid we've got a kid in our under 11s at the moment who is just unbelievable. Like he's going to be an absolute star if we can keep him. And going up the spectrum, one of our oldest kids sitting in the under 18s, also real talent with both bat and ball. So and we've got everything in between. From the girls' side of things, maybe people aren't going to like this, I guess, locals maybe, but the women are better than men at sport in the Czech Republic. They're more talented naturally, and it shows in cricket as well. So the girls that we've managed to bring in are whacking the ball. Some of them really getting the ball down at a really quick pace. So as they kind of mature, I'm really excited to see what, especially the women's national team, is going to look like in 3 years, maybe, because there's a real potential that they're going to really leapfrog like where they are now, and I'm looking forward to see where they land.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. That sounds really encouraging and really positive to hear that, Chris. In terms of some female players really showing that talent at that young age, which is fantastic to hear, and that obviously you want to make a real big effort to get more girls in and playing, of course, obviously, because that's one of the requirements at the ICC, is that you have a women's team as well as a men's team, to encourage women to play cricket, which is fantastic to hear that, and really encouraging signs there. In terms of rankings, because everyone knows in associate cricket, the way you get more funding and money is by rankings and where you finish on the rankings, and that dictates your funding for your own country in terms of how that's distributed by the ICC. In terms of the men's team, where they're currently ranked in the 50s, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
53rd, yeah. And
yeah.
They've set themselves the goal, I think by the end of this year, I believe, to break into the top 50.
Yeah, well, that's a reasonable goal. Is there any pressure on them in terms of, you have to finish in a certain ranking, or just go out there and just play and whatever happens?
I think at the moment it's just a case of just going to play, I believe. But as you say, with funding, there are some bonuses for getting up the ranks. So the better they can perform, the better everyone's going to. More relieved, more happy, more satisfied people are going to be as more coins start rolling in this direction, basically. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, that's always the challenge for many associate nations, is how they, move up the rankings, and a lot of people don't know how the rankings even work, especially people I've spoken to during this associate cricket series. They don't even know how the rankings are calculated and worked out by the ICC. But it's just one of those things. Yeah, sorry, Chris.
No problem. Just from a local perspective, the rankings, I hope you don't mind me saying, it don't mean anything, but trophies do. So we have our juniors, under 13s. They've been going off to different competitions and been relatively successful. They brought home a little bit of silverware. And we, through this, were able to reach out to the mayor of Prague. So this is the entire city. And say, like, is there any way that you can help us to celebrate all the success that the kids have been getting? So back end of last year, we were invited to essentially the city hall The mayor put on a massive event for us where we brought all of our kids from the junior national teams. He presented them with some little mementos to thank them for their success. He created a video from this. He shared it across all of his social media platforms and everything. So whilst the rankings themselves don't mean anything, that certainly the results do. So yeah, if the guys can bring home some silverware, then it's going to help us to raise the profile locally, which is something we're desperate for.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. If you start bringing in trophies and winning tournaments and series, that's a good step in the right direction. And rankings will just take care of themselves, regardless. In terms of the different cultures, because many associate nations have different nationalities, people who come from other countries to play cricket in these associate countries and trying to integrate into the local culture and society. With both the women's and the men's teams, how does that work in terms of the culture of the team? Do they all get on well with each other? And obviously different languages are being spoken as well. Is there a requirement for everyone to speak a particular language, either Czech or English? Or just tell us how that all works in terms of the bonding and the culture of the teams, Chris.
If there was a requirement for players to speak Czech, then I think there would be a very different looking national team. But I mean, I guess that's somewhere where we're heading. I mean, the makeup of Czech cricket as a whole is 90% Indian, I would say. There's a very, very big Indian base, quite a lot of Pakistanis to boot, and very few Czechs in there. So when it comes to languages within the national team, it's English primarily. I think some other languages thrown in as well, but I think that the primary language or official language, I guess you'd say, of the team is English. They get along well. Obviously, there's competition for places, so when, as always, they try to support each other, but there's a little bit of an individualistic self-interest coming out on occasion, which is, I guess, a challenge in any team sport, making sure that you try to keep that down for the team ethos. But yeah, I would love it to be a requirement for them to be taking some Czech lessons, something like that. I think when you spoke with Mohammed, he spoke from Cyprus. Sorry, he mentioned about that he had to remind their players occasionally that they were playing for Cyprus and not playing for India or Pakistan. I think were the two countries he mentioned, and I think it's something that is a problem here as well. That the players seem to be representing themselves at certain times, and I think it would be more beneficial, especially when we're looking to integrate them into the wider society, and also integrate them within our Czech kids that are coming through. I think they would be able to associate with our senior players more if they were a little bit more trying to speak a little bit of Czech or draw something in Czech just to bridge that gap.
Yeah, definitely. Yes. That's definitely the challenge that many associate nations have, is trying to make sure that the team is unified and everyone's on the same page and not doing different things. So it's often the case with associate cricket, because you have so many different players coming from so many different nationalities. You may be expats or people who, have a connection with that particular country because of their passport, or want to pursue their career in a different direction, which is the case for many people in associate cricket. But yeah, that's definitely a big challenge and something that many associate nations have to try and overcome. So hopefully everyone can find a right solution to that works for everyone, and hopefully that will make the team a stronger and a better team, and a team that's well bonded as well in both the women's and the men's team. So yeah, now really encouraging stuff that you're telling us here, Chris, about both teams, and they're eager to play, they want to learn more, and they want to do themselves proud on the individual front, but also as as a team collectively, because they're representing the Czech Republic. And whenever you're playing for your country, you want to do well. And when you have that honor. So that's really encouraging to hear that, both teams are developing well, and they're making some good progress and good steps forward. How do you see the future for both teams? Are you optimistic that hopefully one day that, the Czech Republic may qualify for a global event in terms of a T20 World Cup, maybe a 50-over World Cup in the years to come, Chris, or the women's team as well on their side?
At the moment, that's a long way off. If I didn't have it as my goal, then I don't think I should be doing what I'm doing. But realistically speaking, there's a lot to happen before then. And I think there's a lot of domestic goals to be raised, I think, before those and stand in between those. So I think increasing the different tiers of competition here, expanding the amount of competition that's happening here, I think take precedence at the moment over whether or not we can compete very strongly in either the men's or the women's competitions.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. I suppose you got to be optimistic and, positive for the future, obviously, because as you said, what's the point of doing your particular job or role if you're not optimistic or about the future and about future success? But definitely can be achieved. It's just, going to be a long build before we reach those goals. But it's all about just establishing good foundations and making sure that players are being developed in the right way and grow, and the teams have plenty of success and learn from their performances, and as individuals learn from themselves, and hopefully be able to do what they need to do from a performance point of view as well. So as it's the case with many associate nations, it takes a very long time to build and develop and get better. But the signs are good for the Czech Republic in that regard. And I think everyone listening, Chris, would be watching closely on how both teams go about their business, not only for this year, but in the years to come as well. I'll be certainly casting my eye over proceedings and seeing how both teams go about things and see how they do in terms of series and performances. But I think everyone wishes both teams all the success and hopefully look to improve and get better and hopefully make their mark and stand on associate cricket. So everyone beware of the Czech Republic. They're coming. Beware of them. They'll certainly shake up the associate cricket world, that's for sure. So hopefully they're able to do that, show that improvement, and more importantly, just having fun and playing cricket. That's what it's all about. So definitely, everyone, yeah.
I think the real key here is making sure that we're focusing on the long term, because it's a really long journey, as I kind of alluded to, in where we want to get to. And I think if we're focusing too much on the results now, then some decisions can be made with a short-term interest. And I think kind of at different times, and I guess this is the case across pretty much every nation, decisions are made in the interests of short-term, I'm not going to say profit, reward, success, I guess. And when you take a step back a couple of years later, how much did that really mean? What did we get from this towards our long-term goals? I think a lot of decisions would then maybe in retrospect be made differently. So I think one of the good things that's really going on at the moment, in line with what you're saying there, is the board are being very clever in trying to manage the expectations of the players, who obviously want everything for today, but at the same time they've got their minds on the future and their long-term growth, the long-term where are we trying to get to in over the long haul, and I hope, I very much hope that we can reward that over time, but also that over time more of the community will start to understand the reasoning behind some of those decisions, behind what they're doing. And as the fruits of the labor, as the fruits of the investment start to come through, and as you say, the results start happening at the top end, then obviously that's going to reward that. But there's a long way to go before we start hitting the World Cup and the Olympics, you know.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. But a lot of good signs from both teams, and obviously still a long way to go. But we'll definitely watch with close interest on how the Czech Republic develop as a cricket team, really, in the men's and the women's games, and see how they go in another few years from now. And who knows, they may be achieving a lot of great things from here until now. So we'll have to wait and see. And pretty optimistic about the future. And hopefully they have success. And that's what we want. We want associate nations to develop and be a part of the cricketing family, and be competitive as well. And just play the game in the right spirit and have fun, more importantly. So that's fantastic to see from all associate nations, and hopefully we'll definitely see that from the Czech Republic. So thanks for sharing those insights and stories with us, Chris, about both the women's and the men's teams. Some really good stuff coming out of both teams, and hopefully a lot of success going into the future as well. Chris, let's talk about the growth and development of cricket within the Czech Republic in terms of getting cricket into local communities, clubs, schools, and grassroots, etc. And Chris, this is one of the challenges that many associate nations have, is how they introduce cricket and promote it. That's easier said than done. It's often a difficult thing for associate nations. So a lot of cricket boards around the associate world often ask themselves these questions, these difficult questions that you have to try and work out. How do you introduce cricket into the community, and how do you establish grassroots cricket, local clubs and local communities as well, competitions, pathways, systems, underage comps, etc. How do you make sure those are strong so you can get good talent identification for those players who want to go and play international cricket for the country? Facilities, and we've touched on a bit about that in our chat. Facilities like nets, grounds, and pitches for everyone to access in their local areas, because I think, people from countries like Australia, England, India, for example, you can walk down to your local park and there's a cricket net and a cricket pitch. But in associate cricket, you don't have that. You often play on football fields and makeshift grounds, which can often be difficult to source and, play on. Also artificial pitches, you don't have turf pitches as well. So that's a challenge there. And also making cricket accessible for everyone as well. Whether it be on TV or live streams or whatever, making cricket accessible for people to watch and see is often a challenge. And also getting cricket into schools and their programs, as we've touched on as well, Chris, in our chat, which you will tell us more in greater detail in just a moment. But that's often one area where associate cricket always focus on, is getting cricket into schools, especially young kids and girls and boys, I should say, so they can, familiarize themselves with the sport and hopefully take up cricket more seriously if they want to. So, Chris, what challenges does the Czech Cricket Union have in trying to grow and develop cricket in the Czech Republic community? And do you see cricket becoming a mainstream sport in the Czech Republic? Your thoughts on that?
This could be another 3-week episode just to respond to that. You covered so many of the points there, so many of the challenges that we're facing. But I guess let me answer the last part first. Is it going to become a mainstream sport? Not in the near future. I already touched on it before, that there is a little bit of a closeness about the Czech nation, and resistance to change. So, as I'm sure you're well aware, the inclusion in the Olympics is huge in the cricketing world. Unfortunately for us, it came too late. Basically, the Ministry of Sport, or the division of the Ministry of Sport, just decided in the last year that they went through a prioritization process of only supporting the top 30 sports. So we are miles away from that, unfortunately. And if we had the Olympics inclusion, one of the areas they were looking at were not just the current number of players, but the future potential. And there would have been a huge weight that we could have added to our fight in that, which kind of missed. So unfortunately, there's a long way to get back in to push into that top 30, which then brings a decent amount of money and could be a game changer for us if we could break into that. Getting into schools is a challenge. The schools don't really know the sport, so we're trying to find any route we can go in. So it could be anything from we offer free introductory sessions where we go in the morning and introduce cricket to kids for 45 minutes, which is their class length. And then we offer after school clubs. After that, we do other programs where we've got a partner, which is a national partner, which is a program called Coaches in Schools, Trenéři ve škole, where we go in and deliver their set program, but with a cricket twist. There's 3 of us now that are doing that multiple days a week. And so that's another way to get into opening the doors. Parents are a challenge in that when they don't really know the sport so well, they can be reluctant to let their kids play. So I mentioned about that under 11 child earlier, who's super, super talented. So I was chatting with him about a year ago, and he was telling, and we were talking about how he got into it and how he's really fallen in love with it and how he's got super talent. He's also a talented footballer that we've got to be aware of. And he was telling me about how in the beginning his uncle used to make fun of him because he was playing this silly game called cricket. And thankfully his parents were strong enough to kind of just, instill in him, do what you want to do, don't listen to your silly uncle kind of thing. But that's kind of where we are, that you're playing this boring sport which takes a week, and you eat cucumber sandwiches and drink tea during it, which is where we're coming from, because people, if they do know cricket, they know it from movies or series, and whenever that's cricket's included in these pieces, they're always wearing in whites, they've got the mustaches, and it's really not an exciting, fast-paced game, which is how we're pitching it. And I guess that's, you've mentioned the challenges. Let me talk a little bit of kind of how we're overcoming quite a few of them is by going away from tradition. So, whites aren't a thing here, especially not for the kids. It's colourful, trying to make it as attractive as possible. The games, we're not playing 50 over games where, like I've already mentioned, the adults are already playing T20, but I mean with the juniors we're doing a lot of pairs, we're doing a lot of we've just started yesterday our summer program, and they're going to be playing T10s, which is already a long game for them, but kind of being inventive with the rules, changing points for different things to try and focus in different areas. And the shortest form of the game we have is called Street 20, which lasts 20 minutes. The entire game lasts 20 minutes. It aims for around 6 aside, and it's fast paced. They can hit the ball as hard as they want because it's a tennis ball. They're running a lot, so they're using their power and things. So going away from it has to be hard ball, it has to be with all the protective equipment because of, again, you mentioned about the infrastructure, which simply we don't have. So we're having to use basketball courts, we're having to use tennis courts. We're having to use meadows, as I mentioned right at the very beginning. So you kind of you have to play with the hand you're dealt. And if we tried to stick with cricket, as many of us from the Commonwealth, or former Commonwealth, know it, then we wouldn't get anywhere. And it's kind of one of our first lessons with the academy. And growing and into the schools and getting around kids cricket was, we tried to go with the British model. My stupidity, really, and we kind of wasted 6 months trying to push that forward. And we soon realised when we were still at 0 on a body count or head count, sorry, not body count, that it was the wrong way to go, and we had to adjust. So Yeah, I mean, I've not mentioned their money. I've not mentioned their volunteers and all these kind of things, which are obviously also plaguing us dramatically. But yeah, so I just tried to give you kind of the highlights, I guess, because there's a lot of challenges.
Yes, they are. Yeah, and so many that you have to try and overcome and answer as well. But what I've noticed in this series, interviewing a lot of people that I have, and it's a good point that you raised there, Chris, was a different style, a different approach, because the traditional form of growing and developing the game in Australia or England may not work in other countries of the associate world. So you have to try and do things differently, and that's what you're doing over there in the Czech Republic, and doing various different programs and sports. And I suppose that's where T20 cricket can be a positive. I know a lot of people dismiss T20 cricket, obviously, because of various issues, but it can also be positive as well, because as you said, people are used to football in Europe, and that's sort of last 90 minutes. I'm no expert in the football department, but 90 minutes is a typical game of football. Whereas T20 cricket or T10 is less than that. So it's all about that encouragement and getting people into the game and make it attractive and exciting for them if it's fast and quick. And obviously, realistically, as many people have pointed out, some people, realistically for associate cricket, it's more T20 cricket is the approach rather than the longer forms of the game. Let's just say test matches, for example, or even 50-over cricket as well. But T20 cricket's definitely the way to grow and develop, the game in these countries. So that's where it can be a positive for many of the associate countries participating in the world game. In terms of relationships with the ICC, I've always asked this question to many people I've had on the podcast during the series, Chris. Relationship with the ICC in terms of the working relationship. Many people say they get on well with the regional bodies of the ICC, so Europe, Asia, Americas, etc. Is that the case for the Czech Republic? You have a good working relationship with ICC Europe?
Definitely. With Andy Wright, Esther Delanga, and Michael in the office there, they're providing a lot of support for us. Concretely, for example, I got on the ECB level 3 coaching course as a result of their work. They managed to convince the ECB to do a European cohort, which opened a door that wouldn't have been open previously. Also mentioned about actually, they just had the conference in Athens. Was it last weekend or very, very recently? And Michael, our chairman, has come back full of beans. He's got so many ideas that have come from this conference, and he's hounding me that we can meet and basically go through them. So that sounds like it was really good. They've just taken on board Sarah Begg from Cricket Without Boundaries. About Borders, who is going to support them. And I was speaking with Terry again from Estonia about how she's going to be helping with a lot of work around inclusion and metrics around that, which it's going to be another great plus. And let me circle back to what I mentioned previously about the education programs and making those accessible in local languages and kind of being at the right kind of levels as well. Free, which is important. So Abby in the head office has been a big driver in those. So a big thank you to him. So yes, you can say we're very grateful, very happy with the work that they've got going on at the moment. Of course, there's always areas where things can be pushed forward. But if you strive for the perfect game, you can get snowed under. And I think let's take a look at what they are doing at the moment, and at least from our perspective, we think things are heading definitely in the right direction.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. It's a bit of a love-hate relationship with the ICC and cricket fans. Many people are questioning about their governance of the world game, but from many people I've spoken to in this associate cricket series, and you've just said it there yourself, Chris, is that we have good relationships with the regional ICC bodies, so Europe, Americas, etc., which is good, which is fantastic to hear. And a lot of people are, you know, working together as one to achieve the common good for the game. And also, do you have other countries work alongside of you in the Czech Republic, wanting to help out, organizing series or tournaments or idea strategies, you know, brainstorming? Has there been anything like that from other countries helping you guys out in the Czech Republic?
Within reason, I would say, like different countries for different things, and kind of that's sprung from different sources, really. I mean, we've done a lot of work with Duncan in Hungary from a juniors perspective, Vladimir and Harris and others from Serbia, where we've got a link, and we're starting to head towards Germany with some of our things now. So yeah, there's links there. Obviously, we're not going to have a natural link to Estonia, yeah, as I've mentioned a couple of times already. Just geographically, that one doesn't really sit. But yeah, I think it's one of the things that's growing is the collaboration across countries, and let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's help each other out and push each other forward, which is a challenge when obviously we're all fighting for the same pot of money, kind of thing with the scorecard. But yeah, hopefully again the long term aims will take precedence there over the short term benefits.
Definitely, absolutely. It's all about working together for the common good. That's helping the game out and growing the game. And I think the game across Europe is doing pretty well across the board in terms of growth and development, and people are interested in the sport. And many of the countries within the European continent, barring the well-established European countries, for example, like England and, you know, the Netherlands and Scotland, who are well-known associate members. Also Ireland as well, which is now a full member. So excluding them, the other countries are doing pretty well. Some have challenges, but some are working through that and wanting to, you know, do the best they can. And a lot of passionate people behind the scenes as well. So that's encouraging to hear. In terms of female participation, have you noticed an increase in girls interested in cricket from the programs that you've done, Chris? Have you noticed those numbers increase compared to the boys?
I mean, if you look at an intake, every year we do 2 intakes. It's almost 50-50. The problem that we have had is that the girls drop off when they hit a certain age, because we start at, you know, 6, 7, 8 years old. Our in-school programs run to about 11 years old or something like that, and that's already when you're starting to hit this stage where mixed competition isn't as attractive for the girls as the boys are getting a little bit stronger. So we haven't had so many girl-only clubs available to them. So unfortunately, our drop-off has been bigger among the girls in terms of continuation. But at least from the initial perspective, and so we're trying to address that. So fingers crossed, we're going to have kind of bridged that problem soon. But from the initial top of the funnel, former sales guy talk coming through, you know, it's pretty much an even split at the top end. So, you know, we just need to make sure that we keep that balance all the way through if we can. I mean, realistically speaking, there's a lot more potential for the girls. I mean, they've got a lot easier pathway because there's simply not as much competition for places to reach the women's national team. For example, I mean, we've already had 3 of our girls this last season hitting the women's national team and playing for in a few ECI events. So, and I mean, the youngest of those is 13 years old. So it's been a really quick journey for them to get into the women's national team, which wouldn't be so easy for the men. Yeah,
definitely. Well, that's very encouraging to hear that a few more girls are participating in the game and taking an interest in cricket, which is fantastic to hear. But obviously the challenges you mentioned is trying to keep them involved in the sport, and that can often be difficult on both men's and women's sides as well, because people have other things to do in their lives when they finish school and all that stuff. So that's definitely a challenge there. In terms of equipment, accessibility to helmets and pads and gloves, etc. Tell us about that situation. Do you have any people who donate cricket kit from parts of the world, or do you have to try and outsource them from various sources?
Well, I mean, as part of our partnership with Czech Cricket, we get a portion of their ICC funding, which a good chunk of that goes into equipment. so we're purchasing new stuff. Also, we need it to be looking nice and not being too tatty and smelly, because otherwise we're not going to be taken seriously by the parents when their kids reach that stage. So we have to kind of buy new stuff in there. I hate Brexit for that reason, because it was so much easier when we were buying stuff from the UK before pre-Brexit. Now there's so much paperwork, there's extra costs involved, and it's just an absolute nightmare. So we're having to look further afield. Like plastic equipment, we already source from India, and it's looking highly likely that we're going to have to do the same with our regular equipment as well. It's just becoming cost prohibitive. So well done, Brexiters.
Yes, that's often a difficult thing to do, I suppose. You just have to try and navigate through that in the best possible way you can, but it certainly has made things a little bit difficult in terms of trading and all that stuff over there in Europe, which we're not accustomed to over here in Australia. But over there in Europe, it is definitely a problem. So yeah, that's good to hear that, you get, that equipment available to you, and you can distribute that to, people. And is it mainly a share sort of thing with the kit that, if you're running a clinic or something like that? Yeah.
We're trying to head towards a model where the parents are going to be getting their kids their own kit. But the accessibility of kit is an issue in being able to do that. So we have our core kit, which everybody borrows basically, and only the few who have got their own things, maybe if it's mum or dad's traveling back to England or somewhere, that they're going to pick up their kit, and then they're the ones who have got their kit. But otherwise they're sharing, which in a hot summer's day, I think what have they got, like 5 sets of pads between them at each age group. Gets a bit sweaty, gets a bit smelly. They're not very happy having to wear them and the sweaty helmets and stuff. So I think there's going to be a lot more parents next time we manage to pull together the logistics of an order, looking to get their own things for their kids, which is also going to help us as well in the long run. So
yeah, definitely, absolutely. That's another challenge there. In terms of the national teams, do they come out and do coaching clinics? And, interact with the kids? Are they a part of the...
Not yet. Again, language is an issue. We've just this last weekend ran our first ICC level 1 coaches course, or course for new coaches. So we're kind of going to try and through that, all the participants on that course, form a link between our kids and the cricketers. Again, language can be a challenge, but we're going to try and figure out a system for how those coaches can maybe submit session plans and then choose which of our groups they'd like to try and deliver it with, and use that as a first bridge. But as yet, there's been kind of limited interaction, unfortunately.
Yeah, I can understand. Yeah, definitely a type of barrier there in terms of language and communication there, but that can be all sorted out, and hopefully it can be resolved. But in terms of the growth and development, Chris, really encouraging signs that you've just told us there. Some good programs implemented, and good to see that people are interested in cricket in the Czech Republic, which is fantastic. Hopefully these programs and constantly reviewing these programs and implementing new programs can hopefully encourage people to take up the sport in the Czech Republic, young boys and girls, and that growth and development always keeps going up and up as the years progress. There's still a lot of challenges. There's still a long way to go, but the signs are good and optimistic and promising for the growth and development. So long may that continue, and let's hope, you know, many more people get across the sport of cricket in the Czech Republic. So definitely you should be proud of the work and the team there as well, what you've done. It's really encouraging to hear. So definitely something to look forward to in the years to come. Hopefully that growth and development continues to build and build as the years progress in the Czech Republic when it comes to the game of cricket. Chris, we finally reached the last topic of our discussion today. I know it's a bit of a long one, but I've enjoyed it immensely. We've still got one more topic to go before we wrap up today, or pull up stumps, as we say in the game of cricket. So, Chris, I thought to end on, let's talk about what the future holds for cricket in the Czech Republic. It's very hard to predict the future, as we know, very uncertain. You don't know what's going to happen. But, you know, look into the crystal ball, cast a prediction or two of how the future would look like. So, Chris, how do you see Czech Republic cricket and associate cricket going into the future? Your thoughts on that to end our chat today.
Nice small topic just to wrap off with. Let's talk about the future of Czech cricket first. I foresee in the next sort of 5 years that we're going to have a really big snowball effect happen. You know what? Forget the snowball. It's going to be an explosion because our biggest constraint at the moment is being able to get coaches to be able to deliver what we're doing. And our oldest kids in the next 5 years, there's going to be a huge number of them sort of graduating into adulthood who are then already showing signs of interest in coaching, which is going to multiply the number of kids that we're able to reach with a much higher standard of coach than what we've got at the moment. At the moment, we're working with non-cricketing background PE teachers and the likes, and it's going to make a really, really big boost. We're also fighting for credibility, and I don't want to say we're relentless, but we are a little bit relentless, and we're going to be using the ICC's courses to figure out how we can get those nationally recognized, nationally accredited. There's going to be some additional bolt-ons that are required from the Czech side, but then they're going to start to become modules for PE teachers, or accessible as modules for PE teachers. There's a program here for in the job Ministry of Work. Is it Ministry of Work? What would it be in English? Work? It doesn't matter. Where they're re-educating people who are struggling to find work. And as soon as we manage this one accreditation, another avenue opens up that we're going to be able to offer as an actual employment method. You know, which is crazy. This partnership we have with the partner trainers, coaches in schools, is going to give us access to tens of thousands of kids as we get more coaches come in. And all of this is building and building and building the awareness. Underneath this, behind this, we're going to have the organization to be able to accept kids into more clubs, which then feeds into more age categories, more leagues. And the whole system at the top end is going to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And we just need to make sure that our cooperation with the governing body continues to be fruitful, and we're still rowing in the same direction. But I see, especially in the next 5 years, there's a huge potential for that really to go bang. And it's just waiting for that moment for it all to kind of spark. And I think this is similar from what I'm hearing across Europe, but maybe from a slightly different perspective, that the Olympics has opened up this opportunity for many of them. So I think... but I guess that's global, not just in Europe. A lot of the associate nations are going to be getting a lot more government support, which is going to bring with it some challenges. Whenever there's money involved, there's people with bad intentions that try to get involved. So I think there's going to be a lot of governance issues that we're going to be hearing about in the next 5 years. And I just hope that ICC keep on the pulse with those and sniff out what's coming when potential problems are arising, so that there's not money being what's the right word, unfairly distributed and like us guys who are trying to play straight down the line, still have something left in the pot for us when we're reporting our actual numbers. So yes, there's a lot of potential and also new challenges, and let's see how everybody can manage with those. Good luck, everyone.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. Thank you for sharing those crystal ball predictions with us, Chris, about the future of Czech Republic cricket and associate cricket. The future does look bright in associate cricket, but also in cricket in the Czech Republic as well. So hopefully some of those predictions can come into some reality. We'll have to wait and see as the years progress. But definitely the future is definitely optimistic for cricket in the associate world, but also in the Czech Republic as well. So thank you for sharing those with us, Chris. Chris, thank you for joining me today for this Associate Cricket Series episode to discuss all things Czech Republic cricket. I've enjoyed it immensely, and I'm sure everyone listening and watching has as well. Chris, if people want to get in touch with you or want to get in touch on how to go about things in terms of playing cricket in the Czech Republic or wanting to know more about it, where can people access those resources?
Well, firstly, thanks for having me. It's been wonderful to be able to share our story. Please get in touch if anybody is interested through two portals, really. If you're an adult, go towards Czech Cricket. You can find them on Instagram, all the different social medias. And from our side, Kriketová Akademie, spelt with K's. Again, we're on all social medias and all those different places and website and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, please get in touch with us, adult players and junior players alike. There's two different avenues. We'd be very, very keen to hear from you.
Definitely. So we'll leave links to those in the description of this episode for people to check out Chris and Czech Republic cricket as well, if they want to learn more or, thinking about going to the Czech Republic to play some cricket, maybe for the European summer and get out of the cold here in Australia, then go ahead and do it. It's definitely an experience, that's for sure. So we'll leave links to those, as I said, in the description of this episode for people to check out. Before we go, remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. Also, the podcast is available on Anchor, Spotify, and on Apple Podcasts. Once again, thank you, Chris, for joining me today to discuss all things Czech Republic cricket. I hope all of you watching or listening to this Associate Cricket Series episode learned a lot about cricket in the Czech Republic from Chris. Until next time, keep safe and bye for now.